Welcome to the Harvesting Wisdom podcast. Together we explore the vast landscapes of life, delving into the rich soil of experiences, sowing the seeds of curiosity, and harvesting the profound wisdom that each episode unfolds. Welcome again to another episode of Harvesting Wisdom. Today we have our featured guest is Ken Cooper, and once again I have Dan Nowell, who is my co-host. Dan is again remote. Dan is a gypsy, and Dan is now with Ken at one of Ken's homes in the desert. And so I want to introduce and say hello to both of you. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us, Mike.
Okay, I'm going to give a little bio on Ken, part of what we do, because we are harvesting wisdom. And after being on the planet almost as long as me, Kenny, you've got a lot of wisdom. You've done a lot of different things, and you've got probably more wisdom with the Ready Go Garden system than anyone who hasn't produced it. But you've got more use of it than anybody on the planet, and you've done some cool things with it. So, but that's not all who you are. So, Ken, it's Kenner Cooper, not Kenneth?
That's correct. No, Kenner is my given name, yes.
Kenner Cooper. Okay, you had hippies for parents. 24-year veteran in the media system engineering and IT infrastructure for a major Los Angeles hospital. You don't want me to say the name of the hospital?
Probably better not at this point. Just one of the biggest in the country, though.
Probably the top hospital in the country, if not the world, right? And you're the tech guy there, which is unusual unto itself. But you're kind of one of those Renaissance men, truly one of the few left on the planet. But teamed up with the high school friend Dan Nowell. I apologize for that, and you launched the Ready Go Garden system beta test on your roof. And of all places, one of the most expensive real estate zip codes in the world in Manhattan Beach, and a big roof. You transformed the rooftop into 1,500 square foot garden, sparking the inception of your entity, which is Urban Terra. And we just talked amongst ourselves on that. Your concept is to build these gardens for other people and as a business, for-profit business in different urban areas, and maybe on rooftops in different spots, because you got a lot of experience with that. But we would love to see about 1,000 of you all over the country. People who understand it, love it, believe in it, figured out, wow, this thing is really inexpensive. It's so sexy, and you can grow food better than any other urban garden system. And really, I've done enough research, read enough books, and learned, about people who are doing this all over the country. And honestly, incorporating this into our projects with our nonprofit, Urban Farming Education, we do it for schools and shelters. And probably the backbone of all of our gardens is this Ready Go Garden system. But we also take that same soil and can put it into any container and any planter. So it's Dan and I obviously are proud of it and are biased, but your system integrates advanced technology for Wi-Fi-driven watering, soil monitoring, soil-precise nutrient management, successful garden locations across LA now, validating the accessibility, efficiency, and community-driven nature of urban farming. Urban Terra's mission extends beyond providing a service. It aims to guide anyone, regardless of gardening expertise, to grow their own healthy organic food. And, I can be a testimony. I didn't believe anything that Dan brought in front of me, and he brought so many things, but the Ready Go Garden system was just another thing I didn't believe in. And I put it in a small corner at our urban garden And I don't know if you ever came out and saw agave
I
farms
saw the
yet.
agave farms. Yeah.
So we're 17 acres, and we got just a couple hundred feet where I put the garden system in. We put it in, we seeded it. Dan overseeded it, of course, and we tied it up to that hose bib. It's on a battery. Dan didn't have time to come and look at it. I didn't have time to look at it. None of the people.
I lived there.
You never
Yeah,
came by.
I'm sorry. I
Anyway,
lived there. I had a hut in the back.
the people who worked for me on the farm had 17 acres to deal with, so they didn't look at it. Literally 90 days later, I went there and I was blown away with the chock full of vegetables that grew with no maintenance, with no human. And that's why when you say that, hey, you can show how this system in particular works, it really kind of, you still can add labor to it. There's still knowledge. You've been doing it for 10, 11, 12 years now, and you're learning new things, trying new things. It's so much fun. There's a learning curve to it, but truthfully, you can plant this thing out and stuff grows. So I got to finish this so I can ask some questions.
Sure.
Urban farming, Urban Terra's focus is on fostering community where individuals share experiences and the fruits of their labor. Passion for expanding Urban Terra's impact, collaborating with hospital dietary departments, integrate for urban farming systems into institutions. Urban farming, coupled with the Ready Go Garden system, shapes sustainable future for Urban Terra. Truthfully, Soil, Seed, and Water is the manufacturer and producer of the soils and the bagging process and everything else. But
That's our biggest secret.
yeah, well, we've kept it a secret
And we hope it doesn't stay a secret, right?
Yeah, Dan
we
and I
hope it
never
doesn't
want to
stay-
make money with this thing, or we just
Yeah, we
love
just wanna
throwing our
give 'em
time
away.
and energy
And,
to
and
it.
we've
So,
given them a few bags, Mikey.
yep. And so
We have done well with that soil. Absolutely.
Dan has known you for, I don't know, 40 years or something.
Ninth grade. Ninth grade.
So a long time. So
Let's not get the
100.
exact number, okay?
So
Yeah,
that's
it's the ninth grade.
That's like 100 years ago then.
Yeah,
But
probably.
so you've
We're only in the
known
15th
each other,
grade.
right? And I'm going to ask this question because I'm going to stop talking pretty soon. But I've gone out.
I don't believe that.
I've gone out to your house several times. You've come here. We've talked a lot, and it's impressive. And truthfully, you're impressive, Kenny. And I say that to very few people. I haven't said it to Dan ever because I'm still waiting for him to impress me. But the things you do, that's
You're
like
podcast. You're looking good.
you're truly the MacGyver. Because you can fix anything. You've some of the stuff that you have at the house. Your what do you call it? A phonograph that you've created an equalizer with it. I mean, you crazy things. The paddleboard that has the umbrella that you pop up with the
That
sail
wasn't
on it.
his, but he bought one.
I thought you came up with that one, but
No,
you just,
He wished he would have
I
been.
bought one of the prototypes, actually.
Oh,
From a guy
okay.
that I was really trying to support because it was a great idea, actually.
Yeah, some cool ideas. But you've taken the system, you've put it online so that anybody can go and look at it, and you've done it really on the cheap. I mean, you haven't, put in some really high dollar thing to make it work, and you've played with the
Amazon and Home
irrigation.
Depot.
You've played with the worms, and I will ask you questions about that. But let me start, and I'll ask Dan.
Great introduction.
How did you guys? How did you convince Kenny? How did you sucker him in like you sucker me in to something like
There
this?
you go.
How did you do it?
I just asked you, and you wanted to donate all this money to build the beautiful thing that we did in Soil, Seed, and Water. And I just asked him to put it on his roof, and I didn't even have to hardly ask him. So we've known each other forever. But anyway,
I want to correct you a little bit
you, okay.
because Dan, being one of my oldest friends, I've always followed along with his many ideas that he's had over the years. And at one point,
All of them pretty brilliant.
well,
Has
a
to
lot
be.
of them are, and I show up on the ones that I really think are substantial. And so when he came to me at one point and said, I've got this idea for composting, and I really think that if I had to look at a need in the world, that it's food, and there's got to be a way that we can develop a system to grow food out of this compost idea that I have, and put it into some sort of bags and put it into a place where there's only access to a hose bib, and it could be a parking lot, it could be. And he was throwing all these ideas out at me, and I realized at that point that I lived in a house that's got a flat roof.
With a hose bib on it.
And I have several hose bibs on my
And
house.
over
Everybody has
10 years later, the roof hasn't collapsed. That's a good thing.
The roof has
And no
not
leaks.
No,
collapsed.
No leaking.
we did wait for that.
I did plenty of pre-engineering. So knowing me that I might know I have construction background, but I did plenty
Right.
of calculations on the roof loads and
You
the
did.
weight of the dirt and how we just spread it out evenly and to do it in perpendicular to the joists. And so, no, it has not collapsed. It's very
Right,
solid.
It's
the
actually
original
not that
roof.
much weight. It's not that much weight, really. It's
Not when it's fanned out, no.
you know,
and,
right.
and building codes are such that you have to have a certain minimum support per square
And
foot.
how
and
many
it
how
doesn't
many
even come
how
close.
many bags do you have on that roof right now?
I have two levels. One's 500 square feet and one is 1,000 square feet. The 500 square foot level has approximately 40 bags on it, and
It
the
was
1,000
like 60 when we started, but yeah, now we're
no,
down to
no.
about 40.
Well, on the lower
right.
level, it's got 40 bags, and the top level, it's got 67.
So you
Now,
got
these
over
bags-
100 bags.
Correct.
Well,
It's a small
correct.
it's a small farm, really.
And we've expanded a little bit over the years to get a little bit deeper soil. I changed the container to a canvas bag, and that has given us a bigger footprint in terms of as far as the growing places. But we kept the original ready go garden bags on the 40 bags, 500 square foot portion of the roof, and they are still going strong to this day.
And Kenny,
and so
I don't know if you know this, Dan tries to fight it after the fact, but we did talk about it beforehand. We're going to a 1.5 cubic foot bag, so it's 50% larger. It'll weigh about 50 pounds, and it'll allow us to have more kids growing out of it at a school, which is a solution that we needed because these classrooms
exactly-
are so big, right? And
Yes, yes.
and the idea of putting these things in rows, and Dan knows this. I mean, he became the expert at this before he even met me, but we really put them in rows. We put them in soldier style. So they end up being about 25 feet long if you put in 16 bags. And what
He
that
puts them
does,
sideways.
yeah, and what that does is it mimics a furrow in a true agricultural farm.
32-inch furrow. Exactly.
And
Listen.
most people are growing 100, 200, 300, 400, 600, 1,000 foot furrows. But this thing is divisible into 25 foot, which, by the way, if you look at most gardening extension systems, which means shade, plastic, things like that, they come in lengths that are divisible. They're 50 foot or 100 feet long. So by putting it 25, because we and we've had a lot of people over the years that we don't like the bag, it's ugly, and it should be in a container or whatever. And it's like, no, and we believe in putting it up on tables if you're handicapped or if you're elderly.
Yeah.
But otherwise, if it has contact with the earth, yours doesn't have contact with the earth because you're on a roof. But if it has contact with the earth, not only does it ultimately seep a little because we put drainage holes in, it fertilizes over time that soil underneath. And Dan's got great stories on this. I'll let him embellish. But not only that, because you're remediating all the soil underneath, and at some point you can take the bags off, maybe a second generation or third generation, and you can actually farm right in what you've created right over time. But that's the idea of having it in rows. And a lot of people want to, I want to put 4 bags over here and 6 over here in my yard. And I'm like, well, if you really want to be super efficient with irrigation, we come from the source, we go straight to these rows, put in 3 rows, And now you got drip or drip tape, whatever, system you want. And it's pretty simple. You don't have turns and all these extra fittings, really inexpensive, putting it on the ground. So our system is like the most cost-effective way of growing if you want success. You could try growing it in your backyard in Iowa or Phoenix or LA and whatever was there before, the heavy metals or the arsenic or whatever else you got in there, good luck, right? You have to be a soil scientist to figure it out. But with this system, you have success. That's the number one thing. Number two, 48 bags for a family of 4. You grow a lot of stuff. You know what I mean? Your yield is unbelievable. And I do remember going to your house for dinner once, and unfortunately, I imbibed a little more than I could have before that dinner, so I didn't get to really enjoy the layout that you had. But my daughter was there, and Dan was there, and the spread was amazing, and all the vegetables, and because you're a good cook too, and that's part of it. If you're going to grow stuff, you need to know how to cook it. And
Well,
you got to enjoy it, right? You got to enjoy the taste of everything you're growing. So anyway,
one
I
of the
went on
things
a
I can just
tangent.
let me just add
Yeah,
something to what you
yeah,
just said, and that is that by virtue of growing things, so once you've discovered how fun it is to just watch the miracle of plants grow,
right.
you start getting into varieties of edible foods that you probably have never even tried before. So before I started embarking on farming, I hadn't eaten Romanesco, and I hadn't eaten Swiss chard, and I hadn't eaten, all these exotic vegetables that just kind of come in the with the seasonal grows that you can get, the squashes,
Mm-hmm.
berries, varieties of cucumbers, and all these things. And so
These are all
first of all, it
incredible.
expanded my diet because I grew it, and therefore it made me want to eat it.
Well,
And
therefore you had to eat it, so you
or
prepared
pickle
it.
it or
You figured
prepare
out
it or
how to
whatever,
prepare
and
it,
then
right?
and so it expands your diet. It expands your
Yeah.
your
Your knowledge,
and
Your
all
nutrition.
these
story of
things
that
you didn't,
food source.
and then you learn how to cook them, like you say,
Yeah.
and it's just the process in of itself that brings you to having all these fruits of your labor expands your diet and it
Oh, and
expands your
amazing at a dinner party because you are like literally this
Amazing.
Renaissance guy. You're like this hero because you've got this spread of fresh harvest and you get
There
your
we go.
guests before dinner to help you pick it. There's like zero loss of nutrition. Where even in a Whole Foods style organic grocery store, it still takes a couple days to get there from the farm. And they say within
Sure.
24 hours, 60% of that nutrition is lost. And it's
yep.
And it's
believable.
expensive, guys.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
you go
but
buy
it's-
that. It's $3 for this and
Well,
$4 for this.
My
I mean, it's
favorite
expensive.
thing to tell people when we cook for them is that these vegetables don't even know they've been picked yet.
Nope, they're still living.
Yeah, right. And then now they're
They're
in
still
you.
living.
Right, right.
Oh yeah,
So it's-
all of a
correct.
sudden they're in the sink for 2
And
minutes.
that's healthy living.
You
And-
put them in your plate, and next thing you know, they're in your body.
Right, and we've really created a soil, but it's a potting soil, so it's a growing soil, and that soil's got so many ingredients in it. I'm trying to pare them down a little. Dan fights me on it, but the deal is that the way it works is that the thing stays sustainable for many years. If you take a little bit of our extract, our super booster, and just put a little bit on every once in a while. And you've used the worms, so I want to ask you a question on the worms.
Oh, this is a great question.
You didn't actually use our worms. You used a little of our vermicompost, which has cocoons in it. So, have you seen any worms on your roof at all?
I have worms living in every bag. It is amazing when you move any of the bags that have been sitting in one spot for so long and you slide them aside, there are worms,
And they're
and they're in the
eating.
soil.
They're eating the compost. They're eating the roots of your plants that you're growing. And what a beautiful combination. What else do you see there? Do you see butterflies and beetles?
Everything.
Lots of beetles.
Ladybugs. We get
Ladybugs,
a
sure.
Yeah, I mean, we get a ton of beneficial, bugs that come in and eat the other
It's
bugs.
just a sign of
It,
a healthy garden is all that
right,
Well,
biology.
very minimal. Very minimal. The lucky thing about what my roof is it's not in contact with the ground, so any ground-based creature can't get to that
Right.
crop in
Yeah.
that dirt.
We don't,
and
it's
what's
just a,
fascinating about his and mine, Mike, that were kind of interesting to bring up is he really does work it as it's a business to him, but it's also his food. I mean, he plants much lighter. He does everything correctly. He harvests. He does everything in the time that it's supposed to be done. And 30 days later, 60 days later, 120 days later, right?
Well, we
And,
follow the basic farming rules,
and
and
then he's
that
always
sure.
taken seed to seed, and he has his own little nursery, which is amazing to hear about that. But I just wanted to add in that I have been gardening a little longer than Kenny by 2 years, and I don't do any of those processes.
Mm-mm.
I'm not methodical. I
Nope.
don't plant at the right time. I plant
Nope.
way too much.
Uh
All of
huh.
these things. My garden, I gave him a view the other day, is probably the most fascinating thing you've ever seen. It's not run by me. It's truly now its own place in the world. It does what it wants, when it wants, how it wants. It's absolutely beautiful. I harvest an atrocious amount of whatever I want, but it's usually micro because there's too many seeds. And the
Yeah.
seed to seed and bounty in between was part of mine. It didn't. It just naturally happened. So it's
Yeah.
kind of a mat, and
Well,
his
if,
is
if you think
completely a
about
bit.
this, though, right? So humans were put on the planet. I don't know. There was several species before Homo sapien, and Homo sapiens won out. They won out because of cooperation, right? But
Gave us
the
that thing
Earth,
one time.
the planet, is 13.8 billion years old. We've only had life on it for about 3.4 billion, 3.5, 3.6. We're throwing billions of years over here, but and it was probably the first organisms were cyanobacteria, which helped develop the atmosphere and that kind of thing. So you fast forward all those billions and billions of years, right? Geologic time, and you come to where humans now are on the planet, and it's not even 50,000 years ago that humans, Homo sapiens, are here. Civilizations, as we know it, started maybe 10,000 years ago. So did agriculture, and in that process, though, humans went from hunting and gathering, which wasn't bad. It just was more difficult when there was more population, people living together. So they developed this concept of agriculture. So what I would tell you, Dan, is agriculture is man's way of manipulating the environment to grow food. So it's okay to have some kind of discipline in your diet, in your garden, instead of just letting the garden go. Because at the end of the day, when Kenny's ready to harvest a particular herb, it's kind of important for him to know how much of that herb is out there and where it is.
Well,
Otherwise,
okay. So, and just one more thing is kind of interesting that you're bringing it up is so it only goes, so the garden is where it is. It
mhm.
always makes seed. It makes all this product. And I got a leak the other day, just a little leak, and the leak went flying over onto this gravel that the garden's on. And as soon as the leak happened, I had this beautiful bunch of crops, and there were lettuce and tomatoes. There were all these weird things. And the water, it didn't even hardly need nutrient. It just needed something to give it a little water. So anyway, the bag is such a brilliant idea.
Yeah,
I'm just bringing in that seed to seed is really what continues it into the future.
yeah.
If you
So it's
if you just grow it and harvest it, I think you lose the best part about it is
well,
if
if
you
you
can make
become
seed
more of an
happen.
advanced, if you become
I see
more an
a portion.
advanced gardener, right?
And he does that
I leave a
to
portion
be
of
kind to me.
each crop. No, I do it for seed. Leave a very small portion. If I grow 5 bags of broccoli, I'll leave 1 bag of broccoli to let it go to flower, and I'll get the seeds.
I get the seed, right?
And it's same with the lettuces and same with everything else. My garden at this point, the one that I've been doing for 10 years, seeds itself, just like Dan talks about, really, with red lettuce,
And
tomatoes,
strawberries, right? There's strawberries.
but the fun part about my house is that with all of this going on the roof and everything that's happening with the plants growing in different stages or whatever, I have lettuces growing out of my pots on my front porch.
He did.
Okay,
Yeah.
they just show up. And
Well, the
and it's
bizarre
from
garden.
somewhere.
Yeah, Dan
Up.
had the most bizarre experience when, Dan, you can talk about it when you actually removed a ready-go garden from your yard, and you're in the desert, okay, in a desert where things don't grow, and you had granite down, and what ended up happening? Tell us a little about that.
Well, that's the same thing that I'm telling you about now. Is there was granite in my side yard? You couldn't have grown anything.
Right.
And I put these bags down. And at one point, I wanted to move over the bags. I didn't like how they were placed, so I changed the bags. Well, it took at least a year for that not to grow exactly what it was growing. But here's the caveat: is that it's the water too. So you can have all the seed in the world, right? But if you don't apply a little water, and I think at the end, a teeny bit of biology, our worms give it to us, our poop gives it to us, whether it be chicken or fish or cow. But at the end of the day, this seed wants to live. And if you give it a little medium, which we've come up with the medium, we were pretty fortunate with some brilliant guys, and you come up with a good medium that works. The world, I think, is going to grow off of a hose bib in the middle of the city because they can.
Yeah,
And
or you could have a tank with rain-fed water that you're extending your season to. I've got to take you both to Africa because it would not just blow you away, but you'll be in tears most of the time you're there. And we're doing some of the same principles. We don't manufacture the Ready-Go Garden bag, but we're composting and vermicomposting, and the soils over there are better. They're more like a California soil than an Arizona soil. But the same principles apply to this agriculture we're doing. We just had Kim and Peter come back. They were there for 5 weeks, and just so many things. And I go over there for a shorter period of time in May, and I spend a lot of money. I see things they need. I buy incubators. I buy trucks and different equipment, a pump to pump stuff out of the lake or the river, and then I'm gone. And I meet the people there, and I talk to them. I try to explain to them our process. But then Peter and Kim go over there and actually work on the projects and spend about a third of what I usually spend. Of course, they use the equipment that I have and everything. But for so little, they're changing lives. I think I flew them over.
With you saying all that, will you bring up a teeny bit urban farming education?
Sure.
Why and how and what is it?
So it's what we're doing, except for, here's the thing. The Economist magazine just came out. The poorest country in the world that's not in a war zone, right? So they're a peaceful country, the poorest country in the world. And if what we're doing here in Phoenix or in California can work over there and change lives, change communities, and all these things we're talking about, if we can do it there, the next place
do it anywhere. It's like New
York.
It
might be the next place will be Mars or someplace, because if we can do it, and a lot of it has to do with people and changing people's perceptions and getting them to do what you did, Kenny, get to the point where they love what they're doing and
continually do it. I mean,
right, you can't
get more and more involved.
And you can't push people into doing this. Right. So we came up with this, or not me, Kim or Peter came up with this concept of micro projects. And so one micro project is there's a couple of ladies that are teachers in the different schools, and they're raising chickens for eggs. we raise chickens for meat, but they're doing it for eggs. They also have a micro project where they're taking potatoes and they're frying them on site. So this is a kind of a remote area. For these kids to get French fries is, my God, it's like the greatest thing in the world. They have to go into town to get it. Now they can get those, pay for them, small amount, right on the property. And they're using cabbage that they grew, and they're taking some of the oil. And I've talked to them about taking some of the peppers to get a little, because they love spice. And talk about a great little dish that you can get right there. But it's a micro project where they're starting to make some money for themselves, but they're offering something to the community that's amazing. For $250, we repaired an entire length of wall, brick wall, with homeowners, not just in the community, but the children, the children's parents, the teachers. They all came together. We got a mason who showed them how to do it, and they repaired a wall that was a security breach coming into the primary girls' school. So all these things we're doing, that costs $250 for us, right? So think about, you have all these people who donate to charities, and they don't know where that money's going, and that money is honestly, a lot of it, it's wasted on unsuccessful projects. And I can tell you that the ones we're doing right now, and we've introduced, and I'm sure it happened back in Africa before other generations, but we introduced the concept of the three sisters. And Kenny, I know you grew corn in the bag. Which is a crazy thing. It's a waste of real estate in my mind, because you should be growing quick crops, but you grew all kinds of bizarre things. But
we tried everything. Yeah.
Well, with Mike, if I'm not sure, I think we have a photo that we're going to forward over with you with your hand straight up, and it was still 4 feet taller than your thing.
Oh yeah, yeah.
We also have an industrial hemp plant, since we all know that is how big is the stalk, Kenny, on that? Anyway, the stalk was like, it was what, 5 inches? 5 inches out of the bag, and it was what, 8 foot, 9 foot, 10 foot tall, maybe?
No,
15 foot tall out of the bag on the roof.
Okay.
So
anyway,
but they're growing in Africa now, both on our project in 3 or 4 different spots, and then over in Zambia, where we've expanded. They're growing something called the Three Sisters. So the Three Sisters they're growing corn. I can't get them to stop growing corn, which is the scourge of the planet, right? But they grow it because it's an easy seed to throw down. They don't till or do anything. They throw it down right before the rains come. It naturally grows. The problem is, year after year in the same spot, it depletes the soil. So now they found a legume, which is a climbing bean, and they planted that with the corn, and they put squash down. So it's all the concepts that we talk about, Dan. They got a cover crop. It helps diffuse a heavy rain. And sometimes, with climate change, you might get the same amount of water, but you might
wash away.
You might get it in one day, right? So now it hits the ground cover, which is the squash, and it's diffused. It's like a sprinkler as it hits leaves, and it turns into more of a mist, and it gets into your soil, but it controls erosion. But here's the thing, in that same plot, because they don't use a lot of mechanical harvesting, the majority of the world, 51% is women farmers, 51% is sustenance farmers, small plot farmers who use no fertilizer, who use no irrigation, who use no, and that's how the world is really being fed, right? That's a large portion of the planet, but they're susceptible to things like climate change. But with the Three Sisters, yes, Dan, the legume is acting to affix nitrogen, and it's putting it back into the soil. It's climbing on the corn, right? So when they go to harvest, they got on the ground, they've got squash, they've got corn, and so we've got 3 times the yield in the same plot of land, which is sustainable intensification, but it's done so without any petrochemicals. And by the way, by having these cover crops, they're suppressing weeds. And it's the same concept that you have. You don't really have a lot of pests that are destroying your crops on the roof, because you've got enough beneficial pests that feed off of them, and you've got enough biology in the soil. And on top of it, the soil we blend, it's sterile from a standpoint, there's no weed in it. We compost the heck out of that stuff. There's no weed seed. So you just don't get, so it's really kind of the perfect system. And I'm supposed to be asking you questions, but I get kind of excited too.
No, it's
so
you're right. You're all true.
But tell me about Urban Terra. So what projects do you have on the horizon? What community people are getting involved in LA?
Well, just real quickly, Urban Terra evolved because we have, shown our rooftop garden system off to several people over the years. And one guy came along, our friend Luca De Matteis, and he turns around and looked at my wife and I and said, "Are you kidding, guys? This is such a no-brainer. We've got to just do something with this." And from there, he's got a degree in marketing and loves gardening and loves eating healthy, and he's a humanist, and he is more. We've started Urban Terra, and we started putting in just some beta tests, and these include in-ground above raised beds. So we had, and then two rooftop decks, and then what's so great about it is that all of the people that are letting us do it, they've paid for the materials for us to do it and allowed us to connect our Wi-Fi system to them, and so we get to monitor their soil moisture. We get to monitor their watering. If they need questions, they call and ask us, and we're trying to build a model that will be centric around an app, that if you're a member of Urban Terra and you're growing these crops and your neighbor's doing it and their neighbor's doing it, that everybody can collaborate with us, and we can have an open forum that everybody can trade ideas, trade secrets in terms of making things work, what's growing, what's not growing, trade your food if you've got excess to your neighbors that might have excess tomatoes. I've got excess cucumbers. So we're trying to create a community around it.
Yeah.
As well as trying to create a space that people can learn to do this.
So Kenny, have you gone, I'm going to do another plug for urban farming education. Have you gone on that website in a little bit?
I haven't seen it in a while.
No, we need to do that.
Go on it, because we created a wheel, and we call it the Community of Gardens. And anybody can join who's a gardener, but on it, it's a resource wheel. So you can look at videos, you can do a blog or an email with other people that are in the system. So we've kind of taken what you're doing kind of to that next tech level. And of course, you're more than welcome to share that. We can send that to you, because you'll end up doing, as much if you've got people who are passionate. And I know LA is a big urban jungle, but there's a lot of people who want to eat better. You got a lot of athletes that are just want to live a better lifestyle. And you can't do it if you're not eating the correct food, fresh food. And you never can trust your food source unless you're growing it yourself. But it all comes from the soil. And the soil that we have is just chock full. A tablespoon's got 1 billion microbial, organisms going on. So you've got, the beneficial fungi and the beneficial bacteria and actinosomites. And I think what the term you guys are looking for, some of it's with the seed, but a lot of it's with the soil and with the entire process, by cropping it correctly, making sure you have a legume in there every couple of seasons. And the whole idea is that you've created something regenerative. I think you took the original bags. At some point, the plastic disintegrated. You put it all on a piece of plywood or two or whatever, and you've done that. How many times have you rebagged and brought stuff in?
I think at least 4, right?
At least 4 times.
At least 4 times.
We get it, yeah.
And then we would take more soil. We would mix it in the wheelbarrow, and we would put it back in, and the seed was still in there. So we would really have
you're getting about 3 years out of a typical bag But
The plastic ones, yeah.
the soil goes
And he
on and
has
on
a
and on.
request, Mike.
Yep.
Wait, I didn't hear what you said. Sorry, what? The
But
soil what?
the soil goes on and on. How we
Soil is the
containerize
same
it,
original soil that we
yeah.
started
The
with.
same original
How
soil.
we containerize it doesn't really matter. We use the
How we
bag
contain.
because
Oh,
it's modular. Like Dan moved his garden from first place to the next. You're in the same place. You know, when that bag's fall apart, you're able to do something else with it. But the other thing is it's super cost effective. One of those bags costs us,
yeah.
$1,
Oh,
right? Instead of building, we found that if we build all planters, we spend as much money building the furniture, building the planters as we do on the garden. So, but let me hear what your request is. What do you want to do?
No. His request is, I mean, just that we were talking about is in theory, he wants deeper. So so the bottom roof is all about. It's all still our soil. So the
Yep.
wastefulness of a bag, if they put it in a container, is still a carbon footprint, right? So anyway, and I talk about this all the time. But what the beauty of it is remember the demographic is to feed the world.
Right.
Okay, and the concept is we can make a semi of bags every hour. Okay, so that's cool. So now, if we want to set up a garden, if you have a hose bib and a semi shows up, you got a badass garden and everybody's eating relatively fast. So, what he asked is that as we grew, as you brought up, as you grow, lettuce, herbs, things like this will work really, really, really well
Yeah, your
in a
quick
shallow
crops.
bag. He wanted depth, which isn't unheard of. Now, the answer from a Ready Go Garden, that's my life. I would set the bag on end, and I would still run the drip the same, and I get the depth.
Well,
But
you
for
grew.
a lot of people, they want to. So he saw a better container. It's pretty cool actually. It
Yeah.
has what does it do?
it's a canvas bag
It
container.
canvas bags, but it says what to the roots.
So what
It says root pruning.
these types of bags now are proving for the gardening industry is that it does what's called air pruning on the roots.
Air
Yeah,
pruning.
yeah.
So when you grow in a container, terracotta, plastic, whatever it is, the roots grow out from the plant and they hit
get
the edge of the
circular.
container and they start going in circles,
And sometimes they can kill.
and it'll suffocate the plant eventually.
Right.
Well, what this canvas, and it's a polypropylene mix of canvas, but what happens is that the roots hit that, and instead of taking a turn, they just stop growing right there.
Yep.
And so now the root stops, and and it signals the plant, and it says, "Hey, we need more roots." So it brings more roots out from the core of the plant, and it just makes the plant thrive so much more, especially in the lettuces.
Sure.
And so that's part of it. The benefit of these bags is that it changed the game on a lot of the not all vegetables do it, but some of them will suffocate themselves ultimately. And that was part of one of the reasons why we had to change the bag out. It was because they were encircling. So that doesn't happen anymore. And then when you let the bag sit for a season or whatever, the worms being in there, the bag dissolves back into just beautiful, moist, nitrogen-rich soil from that biology that was left from the previous grow.
So two things. One, the new bag is a little deeper. It's like 1 inch deeper.
Because they're actually 12 inches deep.
Well, my point to you is
he's talking about our new bag.
Your new bag. I'm sorry.
It's an extra inch, but we don't want to really market this because the Ready Go Garden system is so adaptable and it's so easy for us to scale and sell in its current configuration, a little bit bigger. It can be put on a pallet, it can be moved, and that kind of thing. But what I was gonna tell you is that's why, and I talk to Dan about real estate all the time. That's why you don't want to really grow plants that take more than 90 days. Radish takes 30. Lettuce is something, and yes, it can get a little circular on you, but basically in 90 days, you're growing a quick crop. Now, if that's...
And he does that properly. But there's two thoughts here from just an entrepreneurial point of view, is
Right.
you can make the bag out of whatever you want, whatever size you want. Okay? True. First off. So I just said two very important things. So he looked up the fabric, and they're charging 7 whatever, 11 whatever, and 15 whatever. And now you still have to buy the bag and throw away the bag and put the bag into his container. So for his upper roof, his lower roof, he's going to keep for the rest of his life, which is the Ready Go Garden roof. But what I'm saying is that basically the fabric that they're using, this is we're in the fabric business. We're in a lot of businesses, but the point is if we send a bag to the bagger and it happens to be out of a different material that might be what he wants and a little more structural, and then maybe will last 7 years and we'll prune the roots. Let's make 100 of those an hour.
So 2 years ago, I brought you, Dan, our wattles or our socks. And that's the same concept.
Those are brilliant.
It's a mesh. It can be any size. It could be 6 inches, 12 inches. You can fill it up with the soil, and you can plant in it. And it's the same mesh. So it does create air. It does cut your roots.
And you make those sausages, put them on pallets, and sell them.
It's just
like that.
it's just we're not marketing that right now. We can certainly look at the bags you have. Yeah.
Sure. Another thought here too, Mike, based on what you're saying about growing the quick crops and stuff like that. That in and of itself is ideal for a restaurant or for somebody that wants to say they grow their own locally, because it provides, you can grow big on those. You can grow fast. You can grow staged.
And it's cut and come again.
You can stage the grow.
But when you do,
restaurant can have a consistent crop.
But if you're doing perennials or other plants that you might want, herbs, things like that, that's where you take the soil, which are bags. You can just cut the bag. It's a container for delivery.
Right.
And you can
That's what I'm saying,
you can put it in a planter. So we've noticed that if you're growing tomatoes, they grow better in a deeper planter. If you're growing carrots and you want a deeper carrot, if you want to grow artichoke, don't get me wrong, we've grown it all in the bag. It all grows.
Yes, artichoke's on his roof 3 years out of a bag.
But if you can put it in a different style container, then yes, you can grow a crop like that, which is designed to go multiple seasons and multiple years. That's where you do it. So the bag system is designed for that quick crop. It's the modular. It's the cheapest way you can deliver a garden to anybody. But when you start getting a little more sophisticated and you say, you know what, I want to grow a cherry tree, or I want to get, some other plant material, now you've got to do something with it. We had a disintegratable bag that was made out of paper. The problem is that it would disintegrate while it was on the pallet.
Before it had biodegradable plastic in each side, I delivered one to Mesa Community, and he said, "Get this thing out of here." It was a bunch of shit when he arrived, just a whole pallet of stuff. I want to say one more thing about Kenny too. He's an inventor, and in the inventions there were numerous things that came about that at first he didn't realize how important they were, and now he finds them almost completely priceless in their commodities. So one was the bucket, and it was no apparent reason. We just wanted the water source to go to the bucket, and then the bucket to be where the garden went off of. And the other stuff that came about is he ended up having cameras from his phone. He could water the garden from his phone. There was just some anyway, elaborate a little bit about that, because I thought that was some of the most incredible
And you know what?
stuff.
We're doing STEM gardens in Arizona right now. We want a garden in every school. And part of a STEM is science, technology, engineering, and math, right? It's not gardening, right? It's STEM. But what you're talking about, so we have a robotic garden that I bought. It's more of a gimmick than anything else. But for the robotic club, it's kind of a cool thing. How do you redo it? In Africa, we got from South Africa this huge, I'll send you a picture of it. You're going to want it once you see it, because it's a natural dryer. It's a vegetable fruit dryer that is all natural. So you pour a slab of concrete. The one we have is as big as this room. It's huge. And then it's like this tent. I don't even know the material. It looks like a plastic tent. And then on top, there's a chimney. And inside, you have trays that you put in. But if you think about it, if you're a gardener and you're growing a large crop of anything, and for your home, it could be a large crop. It could be one full row of tomatoes, or it could be carrots, or it could be, you've got a yard with citrus in it, and now you got this big crop. It's like, okay, I want to eat it fresh. What do I do? Now, in the U.S., you can put it in a little bag and dehydrate it and all that stuff. But what we're doing now in Africa is they put in trays of this, like in mango season, because the mangoes are good for a few weeks, a month, right? Now you put it in there, and they store them, and they can eat it year round. So what a game changer. And it's all natural, all organic. It's all sunlight, and it's a dehydrator that actually works. I want to get them to the States, but the cost of shipping is as much as the cost of the actual system, but they're relatively inexperienced for what they get done. But the idea is all these innovations that you have, I'd love you to come here and talk to Dr. Joe and to Kim and the STEM classes, because we're doing professional development, a lot of it for teachers. We've had a lot of teachers come through, and now we're putting STEM gardens in the garden, and it's more than.
And you got to be able to run that off of your phone, right, Mike?
I would
really
say
what I wanted
teach the kids. So we can put in a solar array, right? Because there's solar clubs that want solar gardens. Here's the crazy thing with young people and kids today. They put in the solar for a solar garden, and the only thing they use it for is to charge their cell phones. They have, so it's like, because they don't understand anything outside of a digital world. But my concept to you is all these cool applications, monitoring water, controlling water with a small timer, all of these robotic systems where you can seed robotically, water robotically, all of these things that you're talking about using a bucket. So you're going back and forth from today's technology, using a cell phone to do things, but you're also going back to, what's worked for thousands of years, what's organic, right? So we're seeing now this huge hybrid, in my mind, in agriculture. And we've gotten conventional agriculture for years and years and years, and now we know that there's damage being done to the environment, right? But it doesn't mean you're going to tell John Deere to stop making tractors. You still can use tractors. You're just using them a little differently. It doesn't mean that the insecticide industry is in trouble. No, you're still going to use, because insecticides now, which are fungicides, they're herbicides, and they're pesticides. That's what insecticides are, right? It's that gamut. They're actually used much more efficiently today than they were used 10 or 20 years ago, because what insect you have, and they have a chemical that's designed only for that. So you're not overspraying as much. No farmer wants to waste money on excess anything, excess water, excess soil, excess. So we're seeing the world change slower than we all like. If you're an advocate for only organic, pure farming, which is really kind of where we are, but now the concept of sustainable intensification is coming into play, because we got 8 billion people on the planet, and by 2050, it's 9.2 billion people, and people have to eat. And so you need this combination of technology plus just common sense science that was lost. We need soil health. We need soil fertility. So all of these things are the future, I think, of agriculture. But the systems that you've deployed, and I've seen them all, I'd love you to come in and talk to some of the schools and the teachers and set one up. We're setting gardens now up at our office, just so when schools come by, we don't have to drive all over town showing them different gardens. We can say, look, you can put this system in, you can do this, but what do you want to teach the kids? And you want to teach them math? we can go into germplasm, which is basically seed banking, which is what you guys are talking about. And how much math do you want to know? Because that's geometric, right? And you can have one seed grow in one plant that has 100 seeds, that has now next year you got 100 plants, and boom, boom, boom. So you got lots of math, but with technology, you can use a lot of these new sensing devices that are all based on the computer chip that didn't exist 25 years ago when we were kids, cell phones, monitoring systems. Ultimately, we definitely always want to reduce hardcore labor, anything that breaks your back and things like that. But you still need to you got to get your hands dirty. You still got to be outside. You still got to be learning. It's just, why learn? When most people put in a garden at their house, the first thing they do is spend their entire budget on the furniture. They buy all this wood and they build these planters, and then they don't know how to do soil. So they buy inferior soil products at these box stores. They don't know irrigation well. So at first maybe they try to use a hose, then they go on vacation for a week and everything's dead. So, there's so much you have to know. That's why a kit like what we have accelerates that process, right? But the idea that you're talking about is bringing these technologies, and that's where the STEM lab is, that kind of that bridge between old and
that's
new.
Where the kids will
Ornick
become involved too. It'll hook the kids real quickly. Yeah.
Give a Buckminster Fuller said, give a man a tool, let them figure it out. There's no such thing as teachers. You learn on your own. But I'm going to need to wrap it up. Our next time we're going to be doing this, Kenny, we're going to take the podcast over to your roof and to ideally some of the projects you're putting in. Love to see it. Love to see your variations on our garden that you're doing. And so we'll be back out there. We got to go to LA. Kind of the world kind of gravitates in agriculture around, from San Diego up to San Francisco, right? That's where most of the food on the planet is grown, at least for this country. So
I will add real quickly that we're working with the major hospital that I work at in Los Angeles to put in a urban farming system for their dietary department.
Great.
And the goal is for patient education and to teach patients to grow their own food and
they're gonna
cook
let
their
us,
own food.
Are they going to let us use their name when we podcast next?
Well, yeah, I'm sure that we will. We're so in the early stages, but the point is that the dietary department of the hospital and I have connected, and they want to create a teaching kitchen and urban farm environment for patient education.
I love it, because when we go to schools, we want to bring the cafeteria people in, not just the teachers and the students, but ultimately we're growing food. So food is the ultimate goal, right? A clean, healthy, safe, nutritious food. So anyway, I appreciate my guest today.
And then one more.
Okay, what? We got another one.
UrbanTerra.la on Instagram. If you want to check us out, we're posted. So
absolutely. Yeah, we'll have all that stuff on the on this podcast. So Ken Cooper, my partner Dan, great to see you again and to talk to you. We do go on forever and ever when we're
good. We could break this into 6 episodes easily.
Oh my God, yeah, we start talking about seed and everything else.
And Mike, you did a good job today. It was very, very informative also, with all the stuff that you
we got a lot of stuff going on, so it's exciting.
Got lots more to talk about.
Okay, guys, I appreciate it. We're going to wrap up.
Thank you.
Thanks for my listeners to watch again today. Thank you. Thank you for joining the Harvesting Wisdom podcast. Like, share, and subscribe for ongoing insightful conversations. Explore our webpage for additional resources and visit our guest webpage for deeper insights. Your engagement is the foundation of our journey. Until next time, keep pursuing wisdom.